Welcome back to my shop. Got a fun project, an arts and crafts kind of project that I'm about to start on. It's an idea that I've been churning in my head for a little while now, and recognizing some of the challenges it might pose, and not even sure if it'll turn out as cool as I think it will. But I finally decided to just go for it. I'm just going to work on it, and if it ends up being a pile of trash, it's a pile of trash, but it's potentially going to be really neat. My father makes these really cool light boxes out of wood with his scroll saw. He cuts different panels and stacks them in front of each other, and the images cut into the panels combine with the ones behind it to make an image. So there'd be, a backdrop of, I don't know, mountains and sky, and then a layer of a house and trees, and then a layer of maybe people in front of that. He stacks these up to make a little bit of depth to this cool image, and then puts a light behind it so it kind of glows from behind, and it just makes a really neat effect. And I've been thinking, man, I would like to do something like that with stained glass. If I could do different layers of stained glass that stack and make an image, and somehow, and make sure that, I mean, not somehow, it's easy to put a light behind it, but get that light to actually show through somehow in a cool way. It might be a neat thing to do. So I'm going to try just doing kind of a little example one here to see whether or not it works. And I figured I got a new piano in the house, a new to me piano. It's an old piano, but we just got this piano. And I thought it'd be cool to have a little piece of decor to put up on top of it. So the idea is I'm going to do a little musical theme. So the furthest layer back will have, some music notes that glow and light up. And then a music stand there, that'll be in front of that. And then, of course, a set of piano keys in front of that. These are my patterns that I'm using. Just kind of cartooned them up to use for the stained glass pieces. If I can get those made, and then I experiment with a little bit with light, figure out how to set them, what position, what looks good, then I'll figure out how to make the wooden box that will hold and support them and have the light built in. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. I got all my stained glass tools out and ready to go. I had pretty much all the stained glass I needed in my scrap bin. It's a pretty small project, and I'm not overly particular on the colors I'm going to use, so I was lucky enough to have almost all the scrap. I did have to go out and buy a couple of sheets of clear glass, because for the parts where it's going to be kind of, this part will be covered by the things in front of it. I want that to be clear so the light can come through completely to hit those things in front of it. Again, that's the idea right now. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to, I'll grab the camera here and show you some of the glass and the setup that I have, some of the tools that I'm using, and then I don't see why we don't just get right after it and see how it goes. Woo-hoo. So I'll start you with a closer look at the design. Musical staff with some notes. Now the lines for the musical staff will actually be solder, right? We'll just, those solder lines come up pretty thick, so those will create the lines. With this will be white, obviously, for the staff. The notes won't be one big piece like this. They will be in pieces, but I want to eliminate or be smart about where those solder lines go, because I don't want them to become confusing with the lines that are drawing the staff. There'll be a solid color up here. So the notes are going to be like a light blue, almost turquoise, and then this will be a really dark blue, almost purple, with just a little bit here of dark blue, almost purple, and then at this point, just clear coming on down. Because you won't see that, and you won't see that because this will be in front of it, the music stand. Ta-da! These will be clear in here, so that you can see through, and you'll see the notes. It'll sit approximately like at this high, and you'll see the notes behind it, and of course not right on it. There'll be some sort of gap in there, the sort of thing we need to experiment with later. And then same concept as the first sheet, is that on the bottom of this one, this will be clear so that light can come through, and that light is to light up the musical keys. And the glass that I'm going to use on the musical keys really is kind of opaque, so mostly I'm thinking it's going to glow behind it, but we'll see how that goes. That's the idea. Obviously, like for the stand, this is not going to be just one piece with the centers cut out. I'm not that good. I'm not sure if anybody's that good. So same thing, there'll be some pieces cut out of this, and we'll try to minimize the solder lines the best we can. So we'll come over here. You can see some of my tools. I got these things, which I forget what they're called, but you use them for chunking off the edges of some glass after you cut, and they are a must-have. my glass cutter, which I've been working on cleaning up a little bit because I did not do a good job of cleaning it up before I put it away last time. Another glass cutter that I've never opened. I'm hesitant to use this one because it's got a much bigger head on it, and this head rotates a full 360, which I'm not sure I like that idea or not, but it's there if I need it. Here's my glass. We're going to be using, again, this all came out of my scrap bin except for the clear pieces. I've got this kind of, I don't know what you call it. What is it? Iridescent white. It's got this purplish kind of hue to it when the light hits it right. That's going to be the music staff. All the clear glass. This is a really actually very expensive piece of glass from a big project that I did a while back, and I'm glad to have this left over because it's almost got a, I used it for a mountain in my last piece, but in this one it's got this kind of like nice wood grain look to it, so that's going to be our music sheet holder. Then I mentioned the turquoise blue for the notes. That's right here. I don't know what this piece is doing up here. It should be with these. So there's the turquoise for the notes. This really dark blue purple for the above and below the staff. I've got this really dark brown. That'll be the ebony for the keys. Ooh, please don't break this spare glass. I don't have lots of extra. I'm hoping that I don't have to go buy more glass. And then this more dense white. It's more solid white, dense, and you can see it. You don't shine through, but they'll glow a little bit, and that'll be for the keys. So that's the glass we're going to use. When I first started doing glass cutting for the first time, a friend of mine that does stained glass, does beautiful work, said, hey, you're going to want to get a grinder. And I was like, no, I can do this, And boy, it turned out like most of the way through my first project, it's like, you know what, I need a grinder. So I bought this grinder, and I've got it out. I'm just starting to set it up. I left myself, last time I used it, I left myself this nice little note on it that says, replace me. This is the actual grinder bit, and it's worn out really, really well. So I've got one on order. It'll be here tomorrow. So we have actually a full set of grinder bits coming, 3 different sizes. Excited about that. So you put water in the base of this thing, and this sponge sits down in here and soaks up the water, which comes into here around the cutting head, keeps the bit from getting too hot, blah, 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 blah. Pretty straightforward grinder stuff. And then this tool I got with my last project, and boy, was it end up being a time saver. I don't do the lead stained glass, although I'm tempted to try that at some point. And the woman at the stained glass store that I bought that nice expensive piece from, she just absolutely beat me up over using the foil method and said, I showed her some pictures of my work. She said, you're too good, you should be using lead. And I would ask her why. And she would just say, well, that's the traditional way of doing it. And I was like, okay, but this way seems to work. I'm getting good results. And she's like, you should be using lead. But she didn't have a reason why other than it's what they've done for hundreds of years. Well, these days we got this nice foil method, and I'm sticking with it for now. But at some point I will try lead. So the foil, if you're not familiar with it, goes around the edges of the pieces of glass. It's a sticker on one side and copper on the other. And then the lead, the solder, when you solder, sticks to the copper, and that's what holds this whole thing together. So when I first started, I was using this copper foil and putting it on by hand, wrapping it around the glass, and it was a challenge. You had to be very patient and careful to make sure you put it on evenly and efficiently. It was just impossible to be efficient. It was a process to get it done. And I finally found this machine on my most recent project, and wow, you load it up. I've not loaded it up yet for this. I need to get the foil run up here, but it comes up over this thing, and then you put this down on, your piece of glass goes down in that slot, and you just run the edge down, and it just puts that foil on nice and centered and even, and takes a little bit of practice to get the right amount of pressure in the touch and how fast to move. And you know, there's a little feel to it, but honestly, it didn't take long. It maybe 5 or 6 pieces in, and I knew what I was doing with this, and wow, did it make this go faster and easier. So highly recommend this gizmo. I will I'll find a link for it and put it in the comments section below in case you want to find yourself one. I don't even remember what it's called. The box is, oh, let's see what it's called. Hold on, I'll show you the box. It's over here in my junk box or in my storage box. It is called this thing, Glass Star Stained Glass Foiler. Yes, indeed. That was such a time saver. So, and I don't know if I remember, I'll put a link to it too. Okay, so then the only other thing I got here is a little frame that I put together. This is where I'll set the pieces in the glass as I'm making them, make sure everything fits nice and tight and snug and gets it in there. And I'll use this for all 3 pieces to make sure they're the same size. And with that, you got the gist of it. So we're going to get started. Let's have some fun. Okay, so I thought I would show you my method for measuring out the pieces to cut. I put my pattern in my frame, and then I've got a stack of scrap paper that I use that I will put over. I will trace the piece I need to cut, draw it, cut it out with scissors. I'll usually, once I start to have some pieces in here, I'll bring my cutout paper back and check it against the glass that's sitting in here, make sure it looks like it fits tight. And then that's it. That's the pattern that I'll put on the glass to cut. Because I don't have, and also, by the way, so like once you have a piece of glass, it's easy to trace the next one. You slide this scrap paper under that piece of glass. You can just right on the edge of the glass trace that edge, and then just draw your next edge. So that's what I'm going to do here as I go forward. I do want to first hit this with a marker and figure out where else I'm going to cut these. You know, put these solder lines. Where else I'm going to cut these notes to make sure they look good, and then I'll be ready to go. The first piece that I measured out from the pattern. And so what I would do then, so one thing is, if you're using this hammered glass, I forget what they call it, cathedral glass maybe, you see it's got this pattern where the glass has been hammered. Well, it runs sort of a direction, like you see now it's kind of running up and down, and that's running left or right. So you want to think about what direction that is and which way you want it to look in what you're making. I've decided I want that pattern to kind of run horizontally for mine because it's going across the staff, and it just keep that horizontal motion going. I always mark up, and this has, by the way, a smooth side, and then it's got the hammered texture side. I like having the smooth side out with the texture behind. I'm not sure if there's a finger quote proper way or not, but that's just what I like. Although I will show you on some of the window work that I did here at the house, I did leave it with the hammered side showing, and it's actually kind of nice too. So I don't know which is the right way, but for this piece, I'm going to go with the smooth side showing. And if I wanted the hammered side showing, then obviously I'd need to put my piece upside down before I cut it, because you're going to cut from the smooth side regardless of which side you want showing. So just taking a quick minute to show you some of the glass work I was talking about. I did this glass on either side of the front door of our house, and on this one I went ahead and left that textured side facing in so you feel it when you touch it. That's cool. It's kind of nice. But all the same, I'm doing the smooth side out on this one. Glass running this way. So basically I'll just put my piece here, and then I will outline it with a Sharpie. Because I want this to be a straight line, I'll probably just put little Sharpie marks and use a straight edge to draw that line. And then cut it out. And first cut went pretty fine, actually. You can see here's the pattern. And it fits right over there. That's pretty darn accurate. Okay, so here's my first piece, foiled and in place. I know, I didn't show you the foiler in use. For the same reason I didn't show you the first glass cut, because it's been a while since I used it and I wanted to get the feel back before I showed you. And in fact, this took me 2 tries. I peeled off the first part of foil and redid it. I do want to point out something I'm doing that I think is a cool idea, though, is I'm using 2 different size foils on here. You may have noticed on the foiling machine I've got 2 sides. This side has a 3/16 foil on it, and this one has a 1/4 inch foil on it. And normally I like to keep the foil pretty thin when I'm doing an image. You know, I want this to look like a picture of something, so I keep the foil thin so that the solder lines don't end up being so big that they're distracting. However, on this, remember, I want the solder lines to draw the staff lines, right? And so I'd actually want those a little bit thicker. So I've got a thin foil on the top and sides of this, but I went in and put the thicker foil on that edge, and I'll continue to do that throughout. Wherever these big black staff lines are, that'll use the thicker foil there and the thinner foil everywhere else. So here's our first piece, nice snug fit in there. And we'll trace our second piece, which is, ooh, I just noticed this is going to be damn near impossible. Okay, we're going to figure that out. I'm going to figure that out. I might just, you can see by the way I widened these notes, because as I was looking at it more, I realized, those are so thin that by the time I foil them and put the solder on there, there's just going to be no glass left for light to come through. So I just thickened these up a little bit. But the solution there may end up being to have the note go all the way to the top of the line. Oh, I don't care for that though. It's either going to be that or lower this
lower this line so that it's thicker up top, and I think that might be it. Just lower these. This is kind of getting in there thin too. That is probably the limit. That's about as thin as I want to go and still feel like I'm representing something. Do I lower that? This is also going to be a challenging one piece to cut. How come I didn't look at this stuff earlier? It's only been a couple of seconds since I stopped the last video, but I've made the decision. I'm not going to try it like I said I was. These are going to the top. It just solves so many problems. These little squares. Squares are so much easier to cut out than whatever this M-shaped thing was going to be. Was just going to be brutal to try to do that M-shaped thing. And I don't think this will look so bad. It'll look like a staff line. It'll be a shared line, you know. You know. You know. Come on. You know. You know. You know. All right, let's do it. Oh, you know what? I want to show you tracing the next piece that I'm going to cut. Piece here. So all I do is I'm going to get a piece of my scrap paper. I'm going to slide it up under that piece of glass that we've already cut. And it is in there snug. I tell you what, it's snug. Okay, so slide that up under there. Go ahead and press it against the side here because that'll be a nice straight square line. And then I'm going to, again, because these are straight lines, normally if it was like when I do the circles or if I'm doing waves or whatever, you know, I will trace it. But for these, I can use a straight edge to just draw them after the fact. On my thick lines here, because that's going to be foil that I kind of want to have split between. So I'm marking it, I'm splitting it right in the middle of that thick line. And that's going to go to here, at which point my note comes up from here. And it goes to, hard to see there a little bit through the paper, but it is right there. And then for the top edge, I just trace it. Trace it off the glass that I've already cut. So once I put it on, I will connect those with a straight edge, cut it out with some scissors, trace it with a Sharpie on my glass, cut that sucker out. Okay, so my white iridescent glass. Iridescence, just like the hammering, has got to pad a flow, a direction. And I want mine horizontal, so I'm looking at this. And I want the iridescent side facing forward. It's just pretty. It's kind of cool. And I can't remember, I mean, I can see my old Sharpie lines, so I was certainly cutting on the iridescent side, but for some reason my brain is telling me it's easier if you cut, oh no, actually, you know, I take that back. There's some texture to the back side, and the iridescent side is smoother. Oh yeah, maybe. We're going to cut, because I've done it in the past, I'm sure I experimented and learned to cut on the iridescent side. So that's what I'm going to do, which happens to be the upside, the forward side. Got my piece cut out. I'm going to just assume that all of this is on the camera and you can see it. Always try to pick a spot that's going to save as much glass as possible, which would be, you know, probably down here. But honestly, the corner's so nice. Oh, but that's not quite square. It is pretty square, actually. You know what? I'm cutting this out of the corner. Just that's 2 cuts saved right there by doing it in the corner. So set it there. Whoops! Don't let it slide. I'll set it there in place and keep it in place. Do my Sharpie here on the outer edge. Then obviously when I go to cut, I know that I want to cut on that inside edge of the Sharpie mark. A little hiccup in the glass right there that might catch my cutting wheel. We shall see. So one thing I've learned, by the way, when I first started cutting glass, I really struggled. I just couldn't get clean cuts. I was breaking pieces left and right. It was driving me nuts. And I was pushing as hard as I could push as I did the thing, keeping it smooth and just really cramming it. And I just couldn't get it. And I actually literally thought to myself, like, this is ridiculous. This is a hobby that little old ladies do, and I can't do it. And then I said, wait a minute. Little old ladies do this. They can't push that hard as I am pushing right now. And I eased way up and started going a lot lighter with my scores, and it was the magic trick. It does not take tons of pressure to do it. It takes pressure, but not tons of pressure. You're just putting a score on the glass. Now, so let's just start here, and we're just going to curve our way into this nice and easy. And then I want to make sure I get to my line in the right spot, right Oh, this is awful. What a horrible example for me to be showing you. We should straight edge this. And that didn't even leave a mark, did it? I think I'm on the wrong side. Well, let's see if we can prove my point here. Let's tap this out. Look at that, right on the line. Perfect. You see that? Perfect. And I didn't even think I left a mark. That's how light you can be. You don't have to leave a deep mark. It's there. Don't worry, it's there. Okay, so we got that. And now we will go and use our straight edge for this one. And always double check. You know, the straight edge, you got to be off the line a little bit because of the thickness of the cutting head. By quite a bit, actually. It's probably a good, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch inside the line. But I just make sure at the beginning and the start, we're good here. I do like to try to make sure that the piece isn't going to slide out from under me. That's always a pain when you're cutting, then suddenly your piece slides. I should get one of those foam mats that keep things from sliding and cut on there. I have one of those somewhere. I should pull that out. I should find it. Okay, here we go. So we just go just like that. Come back here. You go tap, 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 and off she comes. Let me show you around the foiling machine real quick, as we're going to foil this nice thin, long, thin piece, stem of one of the music notes. Literally, the foil comes up through here, where this splitter takes the backing off the sticker for you, feeds up here, rolls around here, and you slide it on. It's really that simple. One trick I will tell you, if you get one of these that I've learned, is where you focus your eyes is important. It's really tempting to look down into here where the, see if I can lift this up, where the glass meets the foil, and kind of keep an eye on it going on. It's really not the right place to look, I've learned. I focus my eyes on this outer edge, the gap, and to make sure that I'm keeping the glass in between those, not rubbing up against either one of them and not tilting one way or the other, to just try to keep them centered and just trust that the machine will do the rest of the work for putting on the foil as long as you apply the right amount of pressure. That way it keeps the foil centered, because that's the biggest trick to this that takes a little while to learn. Is you'll do a bunch and you'll go, the foil's all far down on this side and barely on this side at all. And for me, the way I was able to overcome that was to just focus my eyes on this gap and where the glass sits between it and the angle of the glass more than anything. So with that said, you just get it in there, set that down into the center of the foil, push it down in there, and of course I've loosened it up by opening and closing it, but that's okay. And then you just kind of work it around, and then you're going to change the direction here to get this. Focusing on that front edge to make sure we're staying centered all the way, and now the other short edge, and we're going to rotate this up and come on down the other long edge and go far enough to overlap where you started by just a little bit. Get you a pair of cheap scissors that you don't care about, because they will get all gummied up. Snip that right off. Get that off my thumb. Yes, I did cut my thumb. Like I said, these projects come with that. And it kind of pushes it on, sort of dents it down, and it gets you a good start, but you can just kind of look and see, okay, we've done well here. And then what I do is I've just got this little chunk of scrap wood, little chunk of, it looks like this plywood, that I've worn down quite dramatically from use. I should probably start a new stick at this point. But you can see this groove in here that I've worn out, but I'll just take that and go along these outer edges, rubbing that down just to make sure it's pressed on there really well. Do that on all 4 edges. Want to make sure that this tape is what holds the piece together, so you want to make sure it's on there as well as can be. And then once you got those edges done, you can see I've got a little notch worn out in the bottom on this end of the stick. And I'm sure they sell tools that do this. In fact, I know they do. I remember seeing them way back when, but honestly, this works great. So why buy the tool? And then I go down and I'm now pressing down this edge here, the front edge, the edge that leans over the face of the glass. And just again, making sure that's really good connection there, because this is what's going to hold it on there for the solder to stick. And we get this really pressed down all the way, really those corners too. Make sure you got the corners pushed down flat. Nice, flip it over. Now this side of the glass is textured, so it's a little more tricky, and every now and then you'll snag the foil and tear it a little bit. no big deal. You just peel it back off that part of the glass. A razor blade can help with that, and then just refoil that section if you need to. But once you get the feel of it, it doesn't happen very often. But these textured glasses sometimes will get you. There we go. And here. And here. Just like that. And voila, that is ready to place on the pattern. So much easier than doing it by hand and trying to keep it centered and pushing it down. Oh, blech, forget that. So this is where I'm deciding to stop for tonight. Get in here and you can see I made some nice progress here, right? Got a couple of rows of the staff done. This is, for reference, about between 4 and 5 hours of work so far, which is about right. And I am picking up the pace as I'm getting back into the flow of doing these things. Definitely started slow, but it's starting to move along now. Actually moving really quickly compared to my last project. My last project was, I spent weeks on it. I'll show you that at some point. It's in my office. It's 3 panels that hang in front of the windows in my office, and they're very special to me, and I'll make sure I get to show you those because I'm very proud of them. For this one, we'll come back tomorrow, and tomorrow is a Saturday, so with any luck at all, I'll get to put a lot of time in on working on this tomorrow. We'll just have to see what else I have going on. By the way, you may have noticed earlier the kitchen sink over here. That's the project that I should be doing right now. I'm supposed to be like doing epoxy poured countertops and installing this new sink, but this is the project that I want to do now because this is way more fun. So this is the one we're actually going to be doing first. We'll get to that one at some point when I'm done putting it off. Tomorrow we will get to do some more interesting shapes. Of course, the circles there and the rounded parts around them. Also, I may redo that top piece. I'm not loving that dark blue, and the lighting is maybe not the best right now, but that dark blue, it's just not working with the light blue to me, I don't think. I'll probably finish this up, then look at it and decide. But if you asked me right now, I would say we're going to redo those pieces with a different color, maybe something just shockingly different. I'll have to see what I have in my scrap bin. Oh, and by the way, if you're digging on this, I need to ask you to please hit the like button, and why not subscribe and follow me here on YouTube, because I would like to put up more of these videos. I do all kinds of projects, weird, widely varied types of projects, most of them fun, and I'd love to dedicate myself to filming more of them, but honestly right now I don't have enough subscribers to even make it worthwhile. But if you all click that button, maybe that will change, and wouldn't that be nice? Hello, welcome to day 2 of working on this project. I'm excited to get back to it actually. Got my coffee, getting a nice early start. Supposed to be a very nice day here today in Phoenix, so maybe at some point we'll even open the garage door and get some fresh air in as we work. Look, we got our new grinder bits. We're going to start the day by putting a grinder bit on there. I won't video that because that's frankly just boring. What I am going to video today, though, is some close-ups of the cutting area. I'm going to put just a lot of me cutting here so you can kind of see how I go about that, my method of doing it. And for those of you who know what you're doing, you can get in the comment section and tell me everything I'm doing wrong, and that's fine. All opinions are weighed equally. And yeah, we'll see how we go about doing this. I'm eager to get back at it, so let's do that and get this day started. Make sure that our wheel lines up to the inside of our black line, just barely to the inside of the Sharpie. Just a nice quick little zippy zappy zoop, and bam, look at that. Right off on the line, it's perfect. Now, we won't be able to just do that tap and break technique with this piece we're going to cut because obviously that's a much thinner area. So that's where these guys are going to come in handy, but first let's go ahead. Now, as pieces get smaller too, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and use the straight edge again here, but sometimes when they get smaller, it's easier just to draw it, and you will get used to knowing where that wheel is. We've got a piece of glass stuck in there. Let's get that. There we go. You'll get used to knowing where the wheel is on the pen. It just takes a little practice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to cut pieces more than once. It just happens. So I used a little trick of mine. I got a piece of spare glass that I put on the other side of my straight edge to keep it balanced so it's not tipping off of this piece while I use it. And let's get it lined up again here. This is still long enough that we can go ahead and use a straight edge. If you can use a straight edge and make sure you get a perfectly straight line on the line, why would you not do it? So there's that. Now we take these guys, because it's so thin, I'm going to put it right up to the edge. I'm going to try to do it so you can see. I hope you can see. Right up to the edge where I drew my line to cut, and just kind of pop it off. Just like this. There we go. And you'll get, these edges will be a little more chewed up than the other ones. But that's what the grinder's for. The outside curves, we're just going to inch our way towards getting them right. They actually should be a little easier. And we resign ourselves to just knowing that we may need to cut this one more than once. And that's fine. So I'm going to start by, I'm actually going to try to do this first curve as mostly one piece. Not completely though. That would be a bit much, I think. So we'll go here. We're going to get inside this line, start our wrap around here, but that's probably far enough, and we'll straighten it out from there. And let's see. Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. Alright, so let's finish that one up as long as we're at it. And it's worth remembering too that we have that grinder, which is pretty amazing. So if we get it just really close to being to our line, we can use the grinder to finish it off. So to cut this notch, I think what we're going to do is approach it the same way we cut curves, right? We're going to first just put a little arc in here, and then we're slowly going to work that arc a little closer to the edge, a little closer to the edge, until really we're going to be down to just nibbling the corner. As I was doing it, I remembered this is absolutely how I've done it in the past. So I had just forgotten that that's how I'd figured out how to do it. And like I said earlier in the video, it's been a long time since I've done a project, so some stuff slipped my mind. The other thing I could do, by the way, if I want to, and I might, I haven't decided yet, but I could take out my Dremel, and with my Dremel I've got some really fine diamond bits that I could use to just kind of get down into that corner and clean that up more, because obviously my grinder's not going to get in there. And you know, I probably will end up doing that actually, so I'll pull out the Dremel, a diamond bit, and just get down there and clean that up a little bit more. But there you go. And all the pieces for the first panel are done. You can see I did go back and change that dark blue to an orange. I think that looks a lot nicer. And yeah, this panel is done. I'm not going to solder it yet. I'll just put all these pieces aside, do the next panel. I want to be able to solder all three panels at the same time, just, you know, because I'll be having the tools out or whatnot, and it's just easier, more efficient to do them all at the same time. There is something I thought of that I wanted to mention to you guys. It has to do with the foil. If you do this method and you buy the foil, get the foil with a black back. The stuff you find at like Hobby Lobby and Michael's and Joann's, if you're lucky to find it there at all, has just a copper back on it. And you want the black back because on lighter pieces of glass, and if we look down here, you might even be able to see, you can see through the glass, and you can actually see the back of the tape on the other side of the glass. And when it's copper and you got a clear piece of glass, it just looks yucky. It's not what you want as a final product. The black looks nice. After we solder this, I'm going to put patina on the solder to turn the solder black. And you can't even tell then. If you look through and see the other side, it just looks like it's more of the solder. So just a little tip there. And I'm going to start working on the second panel. About 8 hours of work in on this, by the way, right now, which seems like too much, frankly. I should have been able to do this more efficiently. I did end up doing each of those circles. Well, excuse me, 3 of the circles I had to do 2 times. The other circle I got on the first try. And, of course, I cut that top piece twice and whatnot, but all the same, 8 hours seems like too much, but that's what we've put in so far, so I'll continue to track that as I go as well. Time flies when you're having fun. I've almost completed the second panel. Actually, I had it complete, then I went back and redid this, and I redid this, and I redid this, and I'm currently, the only piece I have left is to redo this one. Alas, I need to stop now because we have family plans this evening, so I got to go be a good husband and father for a little bit. Sorry about the cars driving by. The door's open right now. About 3 hours of work here. A little more than, but really we can call it 3 between the
time I take to make videos and whatnot. So it's like 3 hours work to do this second panel. Would have been maybe 2.5 hours if I'd have gotten it right the first time. These clear pieces here ended up being a little tricky. This long piece I'm really proud of. This long, thin, it gets so thin right there. And got that one I did really well on the first try. So anyway, second panel very nearly done. We'll get that finished up tomorrow. And we continue to rock on. All the pieces for the second panel are cut now, and I've just kind of set them in place over the top of the first panel so you can kind of see how they are going to set in relation to each other. There will be a gap between the two of some sort. At least that's how I envision it right now. I don't love how much of the musical notes are covered. However, I think once it's lit and there is the gap between the two, and you'll be able to kind of like, as you move your head around this thing, you'll see around the music stand and see more of those notes. I think it's going to be good. I'm overall very happy with this so far. So I will start the third panel, which will be the keys, the piano keys. This piece has two notches, two big notches that come at each other. A challenge in itself, but the real challenge here is that in between them ends up being a very thin piece. This is one of the white piano keys that sits between two black keys. It's a D for those of you who know piano keys, and that is going to be a challenge. It's I would say as likely to break as not. So let's see how it goes. So I thought you might want to watch. And I'm not going to probably talk a lot during this one. I'm just going to focus on getting it done. At this point, I think you've got the gist of what I'm doing. Just might want to watch it a little more. So let's see here. Let's start with the deeper of the two. Think about that. If I take the shallower, it doesn't matter. I'm going to have the same bit left to work on. All right, we'll start with the deeper one. Doesn't matter. Oh, let's outline it. I like starting with the outline. Just feels like a little safety. If something were to crack beyond what I'm cutting, there's a chance the outline will save it. I hope I got the camera positioned correctly. If not, we'll probably be editing this video out and you won't be seeing it. This little inside corner, the very point of the corner, will be undoubtedly a lot of work with the Dremel. I've kind of gotten to where I don't go too nuts on those inside corners though, to worry about getting them too sharp, just because by the time you foil it and put solder on it, you just lose it anyway. You can't see it through the solder. I guess I can tell you now, even though it's way down the road before we get to this step, I did have a thought about the soldering on this one. I had mentioned before that I put a patina on it to turn the solder from silver to black, and I do like that look, and it's what I've done in all my other pieces I've done. Hold on, I want to focus here for a second. But I'm thinking on this one, how cool would it be on this one if I put that patina on for the solder lines that are the musical staff to make them black, but leave the rest of them silver. That might be kind of cool. That, I've got to say, is about as good as I can do on the notches. That is going to clean up nice and the solder will hide it. I'm going to move the camera to behind my shoulder now and we'll work on the other notch and hope we don't break and ruin this excellent notch. The amount of time and work that goes into these pieces doesn't bother me at all because these are for me and I just enjoy it. To me, this is fun. And I'll spend, as you can tell already, ridiculous amounts of hours on a project like this, but it's worth it. But what I always think about is when you go to like a craft show and you see artisans selling their stained glass pieces that they've done,
that they're doing to make a living. And I'll always stop and admire it and look at it and try to pick up some tips on how they've done things, or maybe get inspired for something I might want to try to do. And I'll always ask what they're charging for the pieces, and they will always almost like be embarrassed to say, because they think it's so expensive. You know, oh, it's, you know, $400, whatever the piece might be, depending on what it is, how big it is, whatever. And I just always think that is not nearly enough. You have got to start charging like 5 times that to make it worth the hours you've put in. It's tough. That'd be a tough way to make a living. But boy, you'd enjoy the work anyway. And I guess I'm being presumptuous. Maybe that's not how they're making their living. Maybe it's just how they're paying for their hobby. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. I love monetizing hobbies. I've got a couple of different things that I make that I've built Etsy stores for, and they sell, and it's nice. It pays for all the materials and the time, and also shows a little profit at the end. Okay, I got to focus here a little bit. One thing I want to be careful to do is I just about went to grab at this with the full edge of the pliers, which I still haven't looked up the name of. When you start getting down to this stuff, I'd like to just use the corner. We're just nibbling, man. I'm just nibbling, trying to take a little at a time. We are in no hurry, and we'll just take this a little at a time. Now, I'm going to confess that I would like to get this a little closer to my eyes so I can see better, but I'm also trying to keep it on camera. So I hope I won't screw up by trying. With the sacrifices I make for you, trying to provide quality video for you, and I may break the whole thing. Come on, baby. Hang in there. This little inside corner is the spot, man. So far, so good on this, so I tell you what. There's the other thing. Don't start. If you start to feel like, oh, this one's fighting me, stop. It should not be fighting you. If it's fighting you, then something bad is about to happen. But I tell you what, I'm going to chew that up with my cutter a little bit, because it is fighting me and I don't want it to fight. No fighting. Can't we all just get along? Go. So what I did there, by the way, and again, don't know if this is a good idea or bad idea, but it's what I do and it works. I just scored it a bunch of times in this direction, like this, just to kind of give it more places to chew off for me. And you can see it's doing just that. Well, I hope you can see. Okay. Remember to keep turning towards you here. Oh my goodness, this piece is just being a booger. Come on. There we go. That's what we're talking about. Get into this here. Ooh, I never liked that sound, but it worked. There we go. Gotta tell you, I don't want to press my luck here, because we have certainly gotten to within what's going to be visible through the soldering. I should not press my luck. All I got is this little inside of the corner, but that is the spot. You know what, I could just Dremel that down a little bit and we'll call it good. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this to the Dremel. So I'm just going to take this to the diamond bit in the Dremel, and I will use that bit to just kind of tighten that corner up a little bit. This one's actually really well. And I'll use that also to smooth out these edges a little bit, because those are a little too small to put on my grinding table. But I could put the smaller grinder wheel on there and get a lot of these. Maybe I will. I don't know. But how about that? Not bad. Wanted to show you the previous project that I keep mentioning. It's these 3 paneled stained glass pieces in front of my windows with the kind of the lake scene, I guess maybe ocean lake scene, water scene. And it's really special to me, and I'll tell you why. Those hot air balloons belonged to my grandmother. She had those hanging on her sliding glass door, and when she passed away, thankfully, my sister thought to take them and box them up and keep them. And when I wanted to come up with a project to do for these windows, I thought of those, and she gave them to me, and I built this stained glass design around her hot air balloons. So those are her actual balloons. Some of them aren't even stained glass. The balloons are those melted plastic things, and they were a challenge to get into my pieces, but so like here's the left one, but I got it done. I just love these. I'm so happy with how these came out. This was a fun project that took a long time to get done. And I wanted each panel to have something of interest in its own right. So that one had the lighthouse. This one's got the sailboat and the sunset. Isn't that nice? I'm proud of this. And then, of course, the first one had the rowboat that you saw. So anyway, that's the previous project I had done that I keep mentioning. Thought you'd like to see that. And we'll get back to work. For reference, I am now 17 hours into this project. All the pieces are cut. We're ready to move on to soldering. And, oh, Grozer pliers. They're called Grozer pliers. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it properly. It's Grozer, Grozer pliers. And if you're doing this glass cutting kind of stuff, you absolutely are going to want to have a pair, especially if you're doing these little small pieces. We've got all these glass cutting tools cleaned up and stored back away. And now I've taken out the soldering tools, which simply are, I've got some flux to help solder flow, a little paintbrush for, it's not even a paintbrush, it's a, I don't know what you'd call that, just I use it for glue usually in my wood shop, but we're just going to use that for putting the flux on. Got some solder, which by the way, here's how long it's been since I've done a stained glass project. The last time I bought solder, this is what was left of my last roll, $14.99. I had to go buy another roll, $22.99. It's gone up $8, over 50% price increase since the last time I bought solder, but hey, we do what we got to do to continue with the project. And I see now I got some wrapper on here I'm going to want to get removed. And of course the soldering gun. And if you're shopping for a soldering gun, make sure you get a good one. You want to get one that is exactly like this one is not, because it's frustrating. But I just don't do enough of these. I just keep making do with this one. So I've already done the piano keys. Here's how they turned out. Reasonable, I would say. Like all the other steps of this project, it's been a while since I've done it. Took me a while to get back into the groove of how to do it well. But we got it there. And now I'm going to start working on the music stand. And I'm going to try to get you a good look at what I'm doing here as I figure out. The first thing I'm going to do is just put some drops of solder on some of these joints just to hold it in place so it doesn't move around while I'm doing the rest of it. Oops, I guess the first thing I'm going to do is put some flux on it. That would be good. So I'm trying to keep everything in camera. I mean, I can't see what the camera sees right now, but I know I got it zoomed in. So I'm going to put it right here. We're just going to pour a little bit. Does not take a lot. And I'm very generous with the flux. I will tell you that. Whether or not I should be, I don't know, but I am. And we are just going to go over everything copper, and we are going to flood it with flux. If you don't know, flux is what allows the copper to flow, what allows the solder to flow and stick to the copper, get into the copper and move where it needs to be. Solder will, the reason for the copper foil, of course, is solder will stick to the copper. It will not stick to glass. It's going to get all around this edge here. Even though I try to save the edge for the end to take it out, I try to do the edges last. What I found works best for me is do all the inside stuff on the front, all the inside stuff on the back, and then you usually will have a nice mess up on the ends, and then you can just drag drag your solder gun over those ends. It'll smooth those out, cover that copper, and it'll kind of flow down to the edge, and then you just touch up whatever might have been missed. That's the theory anyway. Sometimes goes great, sometimes not so great. Okay. Let's start here with a long line down here. So let me try to show you what I'm going to do. Let's see. Is this in camera? Sure it is. So I'm going to set the tip of the soldering gun mostly vertical, up and down like this, and touching the copper. The lead, the solder, I'm going to put onto the tip of the solder gun and let it flow down into the copper, okay? And then we're just going to kind of walk it down the line. One thing I have learned is that you can pull this off and look, because it'll keep going for a while. It'll build up enough solder that it'll spread. If you just hold that on there all the way to the end, you're going to end up with way too much solder on there, and you'll end up having to move it around and try to remove it, and that's when things start to get to be no fun. So it's a little bit of a dance and a little bit of a touch, and you keep your eyes on it and see, you know, whoop, less solder, more solder, less solder, more solder. So let's get that going here. It's flowing. There we go. I also personally think it's best to keep moving and go back and touch up if you need to somewhere. Don't stop and try to fix something right now. Just keep this flow going. You can see I'm going to pull off a little bit here and see how that continues. And we'll add a little more, and that should be enough to get us all the way to the end. And it was. And that ends up being a pretty good line. Looks like we've got a small gap at the beginning. Now to fill this gap that you probably won't be able to see, I'm just going to reheat the solder that's on here and spread it on down, because I think there's plenty there. Well, actually we're going to add a little touch here. We'll add just a touch more, spread it on down to the end. Okay, so I mentioned earlier my grand idea, let's just pull this all the way down, at least to the joint and beyond and up. My grand idea of only putting the black patina on the staff, and I'm still leaning in that direction. However, I forgot that the solder actually is really shiny when it's done. I'm not sure I like that. I wish that was a dull gray, and I don't think they sell. I'll have to look around. I don't believe they sell a patina just to dull that. I know they have obviously the black patina, because that's what I use, I've always used. I know they also have a copper patina, which could be cool for some projects, I suppose. And by the way, if you're going to use the copper patina, you probably want to go ahead and get that copper backed foil instead of black. But I've never seen a gray. I wonder if there's just a dulling, or maybe there's just a maybe there's some very simple chemical, like, I don't know, a rubbing alcohol or something ridiculously easy like that. They just rub over and it goes dull. I'll have to do a little research on that. I went the wrong direction with that. I wanted to start down here. I completely brain farted there, but it turned out okay. Come up here. Okay. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to take it out of the frame and flip it over and do the back side. So I made really quick work of doing the back. Again, knowing that no one's ever going to see it, I'm not worried about it being perfect. I used more solder than I needed to. A couple of places where, actually that does bother me. Hang on. It shouldn't bother me, but where I got that tape showing, I'm going to go ahead and just fill that up. Anyway, so there's that. I did do just a really quick super thin on the edge, because I had actually done such a clean job on the front sides, there was nothing on the outer edge. So I needed to go ahead and do a quick one on the edge, just really fast and thin, but that left the drip over here that we need for doing this. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm kind of collecting all my mess on the other edge of this board, so I'm going to spin this guy around. Spin this guy around so you can see this is where we've been dripping everything. I'm going to hold this upright so that gravity will do its job, and as this stuff balls up, if it gets a big jump, it'll just drip off. It'll drip off. So that's the idea. So here we go. We're going to do it just like this, and we're just going to slide across this solder. I keep saying lead. I hope you, when I say lead, you know I mean solder. Just like this. And of course, the solder is made mostly of lead, so it's not that I'm wrong. And yeah, there is lead in the solder, and if you're wondering, yes, lead is not the greatest thing to be playing around with as far as your health goes. However, solder is pretty safe. Needless to say, you don't want to like ingest it. Don't go eating the solder. I'm not sure why you would, but that would be a really bad idea. And the one that maybe is not as obvious is if you have any like cuts, open wounds, you don't want to let the solder get onto any open cuts. That would not be good. That'll get lead into your system, and that's a bad thing. That's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. So anyway, here we go. Just continuing on this edge. You can see it all dripping off, or it's accumulating. Some of it's accumulating on the solder gun. Again, can't emphasize this enough. You do not want hot solder to drip on you. Ooh, that's no fun. Other than that, I don't worry too much about where it drips. If it drips on the floor or on a bench or whatever, it doesn't stick. It just wipes right off once it cools.
There's this. And that's a big old clump. That'll drip for sure. There it goes. And with that, we've gone all the way around the edge. So that... Okay, let's try to do a little patina on just the staffs lines here. Now, when I've done patina in the past, I've done the whole piece, and I've been not overly aggressive brushing it on. Certainly not like I was with the flux, but I'm not overly careful either. You don't want to get it on the glass any more than you have to. What I'm going to do this time, though, because I only want it on these lines, I'm going to try to be precise with a small brush. And I just don't know. If it ends up bleeding into the other areas and everything else too, then we'll just do the whole thing in black. And frankly, I'd rather, if you gave me the choice between doing it all black or none of it at all, I would do it all black. It's this stuff right here is what I use. And as I was starting to say, in the past I've always just been slap it on, let it do its thing, wash it off, don't worry about it. But I got to try to be a little precise today, and I hope that it just doesn't spread anywhere. And a little of this goes a long way, especially we're doing very little to do. So I'm going to turn this towards myself for a little more accuracy so it doesn't appear so I don't spill it. And let's see how well. I also don't want to block your view, so let's move my water here. This stuff is nasty, by the way. It is a chemical. You don't want this on your skin, in your eyes. It's not even really great for your lungs, frankly, so you should probably be in a decently ventilated area. And I do see it like rolling down onto the glass, which is fine a little bit. What we don't want is for it to roll on over and find another piece of solder somewhere to turn dark. But you can see how quick it works. It's turning dark already where I'm painting. It's a chemical reaction that happens here. Boy, I hope this turns out. So I need to start wrapping my mind around the woodworking part of this project. I don't think it's going to be overly complicated. I have ordered a light that will be the light inside of it. In fact, it's supposed to arrive sometime today. We'll design our case around the light. We'll do some experimenting first to see how much space to put between these panels and where to position the light, and whether we even think it's going to work at all. And then we'll design a nice little, pretty simple frame to hold it all. Okay, so there's that. What do we think of that? Not quite as striking in the effect as I was hoping for, it looks like. But I also don't think it's fair to judge it right now. I want to see it when it's all lit up. Okay, so let's do that just another moment to sit. Certainly for the bottom lines anyway. We can start to wash the top lines probably. And I'm going to start just nice. I'm going to get a fresh, use a fresh towel. Let's get this all wet. And here's where it may really slosh around into the other parts, but at this point this will be so diluted with the water, I don't think it'll hurt. We'll find out. Let's wash it. I'm going to leave those bottom two lines on there for a little bit more, so get that really nice and wet in here. And a couple of dry towels. Off of there. And this will just be my first pass of washing it. I'll do a more thorough job here once everything is done, just to make sure there's none left on the glass. Alright, well there's the effect. It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm not like madly in love with it like I want to be. Hopefully when it's done. When it's all lit up, it's going to be spectacular. You wait and see, it's going to be amazing. So anyway,
Stop the video for now. I'm going to go wash this up. What's next? I guess next is starting to work on the design for the box, right? The glass part of this is finet. So hang tight. We'll call that part 2. Part 1 was stained glass. Part 2 is woodworking. Part 2 coming up.